Hi, this is Ennis from Never Stop Trucking. Welcome to Redacted Guidance Rules from FMCSA on Driver English Proficiency Rules. This is a redacted version. It means that some of these questions that might be asked and the signs the driver might be asked are blurred out or blacked out in this case, in this document, but nonetheless, we can see most of this document. The purpose of this memorandum provides guidance to FMCSA enforcement personnel, providing oversight of Title 49 of the Code of Federal Regulations. And this will evaluate whether drivers can satisfy the English language proficiency. So it's called ELP. This policy also provides enforcement guidance for discovered violations. Let's see what we have here. This is some background on the policy up there, but here it says that the policy advises FMCSA personnel to initiate all roadside inspections in English. If the inspector's initial contact with the driver indicates that the driver may not understand the inspector's initial instructions, the inspector should conduct an ELP assessment in order to evaluate the driver's compliance with 49 CFR 391.11b2 law. This assessment should consist of a one driver interview and two highway traffic sign recognition assessment. So basically what this means is that they're going to ask driver some questions in English to see how the driver responds. Now, I understand that all these DOT officers, I'm assuming they know how to speak English, but I'm just wondering how they're going to determine whether the answer was answered correctly or not. Like, if do you have to write something down? How many words can you miss? What about your pronunciation? What about your accent? Is it do you have to have the answer 100% correctly, or 95%, or 80%? So that, I guess, is left for the inspector to decide, and this can be unfortunately misused. Maybe if the inspector had a bad day, or they don't like the person. So I don't know how that. Hopefully they're gonna be fair. Okay, hopefully they're gonna make this a fair test. Okay, so the step one, once they determine that this driver needs a test, step one will be driver interview, determining a driver's ability to respond sufficiently to official inquiries. The inspector should evaluate the driver's ability to respond sufficiently to official inquiries and directions in English. Now, they have some samples here, and that's blacked out. So we're not supposed to see that, because the driver interview is a means of establishing the driver's ability to respond to official inquiries by speaking English sufficiently. The inspector should inform the driver that the driver should respond to the inspector in English. Tools to facilitate communication, such as interpreters, iSpeak cards, cue cards, smartphone applications, and an on-call telephone interpretation service should not be used during the driver interview, as those tools may mask a driver's inability to communicate in English. If the inspector determines the driver is unable to respond to official inquiries in English sufficiently, it is the policy of FMCSA that the inspector cite the driver for a violation. There is no need to progress to step two if the inspector determines that the driver is unable to respond sufficiently to official inquiries as outlined in step one of the ELP assessment. So basically what it means is that if you don't know English, there is no need to proceed to step two, and that's trying to read the signs and explain them in English what these signs may mean. Um, Step 2 is a highway traffic sign recognition assessment determining a driver's ability to understand sufficiently United States highway traffic signs, including changeable signs in the English language. The inspector should evaluate the driver's ability to understand sufficiently U.S. highway traffic signs by conducting a highway traffic sign assessment to include highway traffic signs to conform to the Federal Highway Administration's manual and electronic display changeable, aka dynamic message signs the driver may encounter while operating a commercial motor vehicle. So the drivers are going to be asked if they can read the traffic signs that are on the side of the road or above the road and explain in English what they mean. Now, this might be harder than the actual English test, in my opinion. Also, there are these changeable dynamic signs on the side of the road or above the road where they will send a message to the driver of something that's going on the road ahead of them, and these signs will change, and some of them will have different words depending on the situation. So they want to make sure that these drivers understand what's going on in front of them, a couple miles down the road or 20 miles down the road, wherever it might be. But they want to make sure that they understand, like, lane is closed, accident ahead, road is closed, something like that. So this is what they're going to do. They're going to explain to the driver that one of the qualifications to drive a CMV that the inspector is evaluating is that the driver is able to understand the meaning of U.S. highway signs. And now they have some examples of questions right here. So now to the hard part, documentation for a violation of 49 CFR. If the inspector cites the driver for a violation, the inspector must document all evidence to support the identified violation, including the driver's responses or lack thereof. It is the policy of FMCSA that the inspector also take a follow-on action, including 1. Placing the driver immediately out of service once a violation is incorporated into the North American Standard out of service criteria, and 2, when warranted, initiating an action to disqualify the driver from operating commercial motor vehicles in interstate commerce. Now, this here is, in my opinion, a little bit questionable. You know, what's going to happen to the load, what's going to happen to the truck, to the driver, all of those things. I understand the driver maybe should not have been there. Maybe the company should not have hired the driver. Yes, I do understand. But you know, there are going to be a lot of claims on these loads. You know, what if this is a reefer load or something like that? So I don't know, like that's questionable in my opinion. Should the driver be placed out of service, the inspector should advise the driver that it is unlawful to operate a commercial motor vehicle while out of service, and that the driver should not operate commercial motor vehicles in interstate commerce until the condition is remedied. What this means is that the driver is going to be on the street. You know, now the driver, like, you're on a way station, and what are you going to do? Wait for someone to send someone to pick you up, wait for Uber, walk to a bus station, to airport, like, and then you're done with driving, because most of these people that don't know English, that they're driving, I don't know if they're just going to go back to, you know, learning English and just and get their CDL back. I don't know, because this all, like I said, I'm not sure what to think about this. I do agree that English has to be well spoken, and you know, you have to be able to read it in order to even get the CDL and drive. I totally agree with that. But this here, I don't know if this is the right way. Maybe give these drivers some time, you know, at least let them deliver the load and go home, and then see what's going to happen, you know. But oh well. If the inspector determines that the driver is in compliance with the regulations requirements to have the ability to respond to official inquiries and to understand highway traffic signs and signals, the inspector may elect to conduct the remainder of the inspection using the communication methods and techniques best suited to facilitate the safe and effective completion of the inspection. This policy applies to all FMCSA enforcement personnel who perform inspections of motor carriers and drivers in the United States. So they all can perform this. Engaged in interstate operation of commercial motor vehicles. However, when performing inspections of drivers operating commercial motor vehicles in the border commercial zones along the U.S.-Mexico border, FMCSA enforcement personnel should cite drivers for violations in accordance with this policy, but should not take follow-on actions of placing the driver out of service or initiating an action to disqualify the driver. In accordance with prior guidance issued in 2014, drivers who are hearing impaired but have obtained an exemption from the hearing standard shall not be deemed unqualified and placed out of service under 49 CFR if they're unable to communicate orally in English. And I did read here somewhere that, let me see if I can find this. Yeah, right here. Strategies for communication. Inspectors may explain in English or any language that can be understood by the driver. One inspector should conduct their portion of the driver interview in English as a means of establishing the driver's ability to speak in English sufficiently. The inspector will be evaluating the driver's ability to respond in English, so drivers should respond to the driver interview questions in English. And if the inspector determines the driver is unable to respond sufficiently to official inquiries in English, the inspector should cite the driver for a violation. The inspector should speak slowly but naturally, be mindful not to rush the questions, and paraphrase in English as appropriate. Now, this here is what worries me. Okay, you're going to speak slowly but naturally. Even for us who live here in North, it's hard to understand people from the South. You know, it's what it is. So imagine if you have someone that is not a native speaker and someone speak like that, that's going to be very hard to understand. And then also one thing here that's weird is that this does not apply in the border zones, commercial zones along the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, what's the difference? If you're going to enforce this, you should enforce it everywhere. What's the difference between the traffic and the people that might be in danger around the border zones and the people in other parts of the country when it comes to being able to speak English and being safe on the road? So why are you letting these people go but not the other ones? So that's a question that I have. And then at the end, they have these sample of these signs and they're gonna ask them. Let me know what you think about this. And I know most people will agree that there should be an English proficiency test, and these drivers should be able to speak English. My only trouble is like how to actually enforce that rule and what the fines should be. Thank you for watching. This is Anis from Never Stop Trucking.